As a continued part of the self-publishing interview series, I'm really proud to present probably one of the most prolific authors I've brought on this channel thus far in Martin Crosbie. You want to hear more about this guy's story, so stay tuned. Welcome to Self-Publishing with Dale, and if you want tips and strategies for publishing your own books, then make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn your notifications on for all my latest videos. I am real excited today to have my guest, Martin Crosbie. You may have remembered me mentioning Martin in a recent interview with Paul Riga. Well, here's Martin Crosbie's story. In a press release, Amazon called Martin Crosbie's debut novel, My Temporary Life, one of their success stories. His self-publishing journey has been chronicled in Publishers Weekly, Forbes Online, and Canada's Globe and Mail newspaper. Martin's recent release, The Dead List, a John Drake mystery, was awarded a publishing contract by Kindle Press. He's also the author of My Name is Hardly, Book 2 of My Temporary Life trilogy, Lies I Never Told, a collection of short stories, How I Sold 30,000 ebooks on Amazon's Kindle, and Believing Again, A Tale of Two Christmases. Martin was born in the Highlands of Scotland and currently makes his home just outside Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. Well, without any further ado, let's get to the interview. Well, with Amazon having a press release of something so significant and saying that today's interviewed guest had a debut novel called My Temporary Life, where they said it is one of their success stories, that's big deal. When he has another book called How I Sold 30,000 ebooks on Amazon's Kindle, that is a pretty big deal. So it is really my pleasure to introduce to you guys today, Martin Crosbie. Martin, how you feeling?
I'm doing great, Dale, especially after that introduction. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's all downhill from here, buddy. You know, I told you even before we connected, I was like, I'm going to try a little bit of a different introduction because typically I come in and I go, welcoming to the show, but I already said welcome, prior to this. See, we already have an intro and an outro for this. When people are watching this, there is an intro and outro. You haven't seen it, but it'll be there. And that's why it just feels redundant. And I just feel like, gosh, it's really cool to get connected with somebody that Amazon has literally taken a stamp and put it right on top of it. But before we get to that particular point, because I want to ask about that, I want to know a little bit more about you. Martin, tell me a little bit about you. And why did you ever get into writing books?
I guess I was the guy in elementary school and junior high who always liked writing stories. I was always writing stories, and I enjoyed people reading my stories. And somewhere after that school period, I just kind of stopped. I got into the workforce and did a bunch of stuff and didn't do it anymore. Then when I hit my 40s, I as we tend to do sometimes, had a look at my life, and that was one of the things I wanted to revisit. So I revisited it and was very fortunate. I took some courses and was mentored by just a great man, Ed Griffin, who unfortunately is not with us anymore. But I would take my stories into class each week, and he'd spend a little more time with me. And he said, I think you could write a book. I think you'd write a book. And that was all I needed. I needed that confidence and push, and I did. I just kept pushing forward, pushing. And it took several of his classes, I think 3 of his classes, and then I joined a writing group that he facilitated. And in the writing group, I presented my work, and I said I've written a book, and they all kind of smiled, and then each week we'd go through our work. And I hadn't written a book yet, Dale. I thought it was a book, but it wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
But it was a good start. It was a good first or second or third draft.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I had this big gap in the middle of my life. And then I started writing again. And as you know, once it gets you, it doesn't let you go. So I just kept going with it.
That's tremendous. Now, was this first book, did you publish that immediately, or is this something that you just kind of sat on for a while?
That was, my first book was called My Temporary Life. And no, I couldn't wait to unleash my brilliance on the world. So I wanted
Yeah.
to get it out right away, of course. So I picked a few agents and publishers and contacted them,
Uh-huh.
and told them that they could publish my brilliance, and nobody wanted to. Nobody
Oh.
wanted to publish my book. I know, I couldn't believe it. That actually uh, first query letter that I sent was to a high-profile New York agent, and she replied within a day, and she said, "I'd like more." And I thought, well, that's it. There's no point. And I contacted Ed, my mentor, and I said, it's a done deal. I'll have to figure out, contracts and so forth, and I'm going to sell a lot of books, and I'll probably end up living on an island just writing, and and I sent her whatever it was she requested, and it came back a day later. So her turnaround time was incredible, and she
Yeah.
wasn't interested. And so I kept
Oh,
querying, and I know,
that had to have been very defeating. So you pushed on despite that rejection.
I pushed on because I had another thing going on at the same time. I kept submitting query letters. I had
Yeah.
150 query letters at the end, all rejected. Nobody wanted to publish my work. And I'd take my query rejections, and if it was an email, I'd print it out, and I put them all over the fridge, ran out of room real quick. So then I put them all over my office walls, and my partner thought I was nuts, but I did it, and it was a good incentive. It pushed me,
Yeah.
because at the same time that I was getting rejections from traditional publishing, I was sending out my work to my first beta readers. I didn't know that's what they were, but I was sending them out to beta readers, and they were coming back. And there was one thing that they all kind of said was, "Is there more? Is there another book? We'd like to read more." So I thought, well, I must have something here. There must be something going on. So that kind of put me onto the road to researching self-publishing.
Interesting. And so about what year was this that you started to investigate self-publishing, and what did you find initially?
2011.
Oh,
That
okay.
was 2011. So, yeah, 2011. So it was amazing because all the information is there, and the one thing that struck me really quickly was how forthcoming other authors were with information. I'd ask and I'd get answers, and there's no other industry that I've ever been involved in where you could call up a potential competitor and say, how are you handling this and what's working for you? With authors, for the most part, we work together and we share what's working, and we share what's not working. And I was very lucky. I managed to hook up with some really positive people that were doing really well,
Yeah.
and I listened to them. And when an author said your synopsis is crap, your your cover, your book cover is not indicative of the story. You it needed work. I needed my presentation needed work, but they all kind of said your content is good, your content is okay. So I knew I needed to make some changes. So I published in 2011,
Hmm.
and at the beginning of 2012, the KDP Select Whisper was still a whisper and not quite a roar yet, and
Yeah.
free promotions were still a whisper. And I was lucky. My timing was very good, Dale, and I made the changes in terms of my presentation that I had to make.
Yeah.
And then I jumped on KDP Select, ran a free promotion, and again, the timing was wonderful,
Yeah.
and I did really well.
Do you think you would have been as successful if you didn't have that inner circle of writers to help you along?
Absolutely not. No, my presentation just wasn't there. I'd put together a cover that wasn't very good. My synopsis was not enticing at all. There were a lot of changes I had to make. So without that, no, it wouldn't have happened. I might have made a little bit of a run,
Yeah.
but not the way I was. Temporary Life still is my most successful book. It got to number 4 overall on Amazon in paid. It was
Oh,
crazy. It
hang on
was,
a second. I have to, I think you're breaking up a little bit. I think you said number 4 in all of Amazon. Did you
it
say
was nuts. Yeah, I did. It was nuts. Unfortunately,
wow?
unfortunately, it didn't stay there. It kind
Right.
of lingered lower than that, but it was a surreal time. And that
Yeah.
was, again, timing is everything. And that was, I'd run a free promotion, and the algorithms were different at that time. And
Yeah.
I took a good run towards the top. And I was able to see my book and my name amongst authors that I'd read over the years. And I got really lucky.
Wow. So you've mentioned Amazon algorithm and such like that, how it's so different back then than it is today. So would you say that getting to number 4 in the Amazon paid store is going to be much more difficult today than it was before, or is it easier today?
Well, I haven't been able to do it again. I haven't
Okay.
even got close again. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have to believe that good content will always find an audience,
Yeah.
and I think it will. I think there's still a way. Although I'm involved in a project now that's helping that content, and we can talk about that later.
Yes.
Helping that content get to an audience, but I really do believe that good content will find an audience. If readers want to read your book, they'll read it, and there's still processes that you can go through to find those readers. So other people are doing it. So other self-published authors are doing it. I just haven't come up with a book that resonates with readers again, like My Temporary Life did. I've done well with my other
Yeah.
books. My most recent, the second last book that I wrote was a Kindle Scout winner. So that was another avenue that
Nice.
yeah, thank you. That was another avenue that I took to try and reach an audience. So there's ways that you can try. So is it easier? I think great content will get there. But
Mhm.
yeah, great content will get there.
That's amazing. And I definitely want to talk a little bit about Kindle Scout because this is something I have not exposed the viewers to just yet. I would like to come back to that in just a moment. What I want to focus on before we do move forward is this inner circle of writers. How did you find these people, and do you still stay in contact with them today?
Yeah, I do still stay in contact at Facebook. So I just through my Facebook profile, and I joined writers groups,
Okay.
and picked out some people and started asking questions, and I got answers back quite quickly. And that's where I got the input on synopsis and cover and so forth. And so through Facebook, primarily through Facebook and Facebook writer groups.
Tremendous. Is there any one group that you can suggest or a way to find a good group for anybody watching this?
Unfortunately, it's changed a little bit. There were some groups that were really active that I used back then that aren't as active anymore.
Yeah.
But they're out there. Just search writers groups within Facebook, and you're
Yeah.
going to find your level. You're going to find writers that are doing what you do, or you can even search within the genre that you write too, and connect with writers in your genre.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think this was a friend of a friend here. You and I both have a mutual friend in Paul Riga, which by the time this airs, people have already probably watched that video a couple hundred times. But Paul is just the master networker, and I think
Hmm.
that he's introduced me to dozens of people, and I've known him for the past couple of years. It's like right as soon as I get to know somebody, he goes, "Oh, you got to learn. You got to meet this person." I've learned so much from this guy, and it's just tremendous. So I don't know. Do you have somebody like a Paul Rega other than Paul Rega?
Paul is amazing. When my first book was doing so well, I was part of a writers group that on Facebook. Master Coda is the name, and unfortunately, it's not as active as it once was. But Paul was a member there, and he heard that I was doing well, and he texted me and he said, "Phone me." You don't phone people that you talk to online. We talk
Yes.
message, maybe text, maybe text. We might get to that point. We don't phone each other, but we did. We talked on the phone and we hit it off. And his energy, like Paul's energy, is just incredible. And he analyzed really quickly what was happening.
Uh-huh.
In that, as writers, we had product and we couldn't go the traditional route. It wasn't working for us. So there's our audience. Let's just give them the product. So yeah, Paul is amazing. And I have a number of people. I don't know who to mention. to be honest with you. But Paul
Yeah.
would be, he's my go-to guy for sure. In
So,
terms
sorry to put you on the spot.
no, no
Now I'm
problem.
starting to think about that question. If somebody asked me, I'd be like, you're afraid that if you say one person, you're going to forget
Yeah,
six
yeah.
other people, and they're going to be like, seriously, Martin, you didn't mention me. You remember what I did for you?
Let me tell you one thing. I write occasional posts for Indies Unlimited. Indies Unlimited is a great website that helps writers at all levels.
Excellent.
And Kat Brooks, KS Brooks, runs the site. So she's been tremendous help to me. So Indies Unlimited is a great resource for writers that you could, and they have a Facebook group too, Indies Unlimited fans, and indiesunlimited.com. So that's a great resource for writers.
Excellent. I'm jotting that one down because I want to make sure I insert that into the link in the description below
Okay.
here and the very future, because I want to make sure everybody gets as much of the resources as possible. All right. So I'd like to kind of jump back over to something we shelved just previously. You started to talk about the Kindle Scout program.
Sure.
Admittedly, I've probably posted hundreds. Actually, I have posted hundreds of videos, but I have yet to break ground on Kindle Scout. It's for good reason. I have a tenuous grasp on what the program's about, how to enter it, and what it gets you, but I have yet to actually try to do it. So could you walk me through what is Kindle Scout and what was your experience with it, and how were you able to strike up a deal through Kindle Scout?
I chose Kindle Scout in 6 months after it was created, and the reason was my book's not well. The normal promotions that we do are free promotions and Kindle countdowns and so forth weren't working for me as well as they once had. And I thought, if I could just write and have somebody else do the marketing, it would help a lot. And that's kind of what Kindle Scout does. The program is you submit your book to the Kindle Scout editors, and Kindle Scout is like an Amazon imprint, one of their smaller imprints. So one of their publishing houses, or Kindle presses rather. So you submit your book to Kindle Scout. If they accept it as part of a Kindle Scout campaign, they will post your book cover and a blurb and your bio and the first chapter or two, I believe, of your work for 30 days on the Kindle Scout site. So within those 30 days, readers can read the section that you've submitted, and they can either say, yeah, I'd like to read more, or I don't like it. So if they nominate your book, you're trying to get as many nominations as you can. Of course, they have a hot and trending category that you're trying to get into. So it's basically showing the Kindle Scout editors that readers are interested in your book. So after the 30 days, the Kindle Press editors have a look at your content and have a look at the votes nominations that you've had and decide whether or not they're going to publish you. If they publish you, they give you a small advance, and then they publish your book. So they own the rights for 5 years. In terms of the results from year one with my book were good. They were pretty good. I liked the results. I sold some books. I didn't get anywhere near the numbers that my first book did, but it was really promising. And they're always coming out with new programs in terms of, we're going to run a sale, we're going to try this, we're going to do this. So I was really pleased with the way that they were trying different marketing techniques to find me readers. So the first year was pretty good. Year two hasn't been as strong. And again, it could be me, could be content. It's maybe just not the right book at this time. So, but year two hasn't been as strong, and I still like the Kindle Scout. Availability and communication skills aren't there. It's very difficult sometimes to communicate with the Kindle Press people.
Gotcha.
But I think they're working on that. But it's a great way to, the worst that can happen is you don't make it. And even not making it, it's a great process to go through. And then you go have your launch. And unless this has changed, I believe when you have your launch, even after an unsuccessful Scout campaign, they will notify the folks that nominated your book that your book has launched on Amazon. So that's kind of a plus too. So there's not much of a downside. So it's worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was able to do was a few writer friends, and of course, I'm just going to name drop here, and I'd love to get her on the show. Lorraine Nelson actually had put her book up for Kindle Scout probably about a year ago, and of course, I upvoted because I love her writing. She's just quite the articulate writer, and very prolific in everything that she does. But she didn't get ultimately Kindle Scout, but I do recall getting an email from Amazon when it had went live on the launch.
Okay,
So
so it's
I guess
good.
it is a great benefit. Man, that's, I think everybody can really benefit from this in the long term if they at least give it a shot. So Matt, you've really kind of piqued my curiosity. So I
Okay.
definitely want to kind of move forward on that. So um, I want to talk about your website. But before we do jump into that, I'd love to kind of know, I see that you have a lot of books inside your backlog. What are some of the things that you've written, and what are you currently writing?
My first book, as I told you, was My Temporary Life.
Yeah.
That after writing that, there was a character within that book. His name is Hardly, and readers want to know more about Hardly. So I determined that My Temporary Life would be book one of a trilogy, even though I didn't have another word written of the other two books. So I did produce the book two, and then I got stuck. And of course, for 2 years, I've been saying trilogy, trilogy, trilogy. So you have to produce a third book. So
Yeah.
I did produce that third book last year. So that was 5 years
Congrats.
after the first one. So I completed my trilogy, and it was just such a relief to get the trilogy completed. So the second book is called My Name is Hardly, and the third book is called All Good Men Must Fall. So I have that trilogy, and I'm proud of the fact that I was able to write a complete story over three books that kind of works together. They all work well together. So I was pleased with that. I've written my self-publishing guide, which is how I sold 30,000 ebooks on Amazon. And I wanted to write, I had a friend 3 years ago who was writing romances, and she was churning out romances, seasonal romances.
Hmm.
And I'd read them, and I thought, I could do that. I could write a romance. How hard could it be to write a romance? I write a Christmas romance. So I wrote a book called Believing Again, A Tale of Two Christmases.
Yeah.
And I have a friend, Sable Hunter, who's a very well-known romance writer. And I said, I think I've written this. I think I've written a romance. I think it's good. So she has a team of beta readers, like a lot of beta readers. And she said, well, give it to me, and I'll send it to my team, and let's see what they think. And she sent it to her team, and I believe there were about 25, possibly a little more beta readers that read it. And these are readers that read traditional romances. And
Yeah.
the comments came back, and nobody said they didn't like the story, and nobody said they didn't like the writing, but pretty well all of them said, this isn't a traditional romance. This isn't what I'm looking for. If you market this as a traditional romance, people are going to be disappointed. And they pointed out some areas that didn't work. And one of the areas that they said didn't work, they kept saying this phrase over and over. They said it doesn't have an HEA, doesn't have an HEA, a satisfying HEA. That was exactly my Luke Dale.
Yeah.
And
What?
I had to ask Sable, and it's happily ever after. And I don't really write happily
Whoa.
ever after. So I went back to work and reworked it and made a lot of the changes that they suggested, but there's some of them that I didn't make. And I remember my mentor, who I mentioned, Ed Griffin, he'd always say to me when he was teaching, he'd say, listen very carefully to everything that I say, and then think about it. But if you don't agree, throw my advice out the window, because nobody knows your story better than you do. And I've always remembered that. There are some points that we have to stick with. Now, there's some things that I haven't changed, and I look back in books now and I think, they were right. I probably should have made that change. But I held tough with a number of things on that book, and then I sent it to a new team of beta readers. Again, Sable was very kind with her team, and it came back, and it was more positive result. And I still didn't have a totally satisfying HEA, but I did make a lot of the changes that they said. and I put out the book. So that's Believing Again, A Tale of Two Christmases, and I did get it out in time for Christmas a couple of years ago, and it did quite well. And then it was suggested to me that Christmas books actually sell quite well during the summer. During the summer, yeah. So it's a beach read. Well, I didn't think it would, but I did a summer promotion, and the book did really well for me.
No kidding.
Yeah, so so I've written a romance, but I kind of determined going through that process that I'm not a romance writer. I'm not a romance writer. So my first book was literary fiction. My second one was a thriller. The third book of the trilogy was back to literary fiction. This was a romance, and I wrote my self-publishing guidebook. And so I kind of trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up as a writer, going through all these different genres. So the book that was published by Kindle Press and the Kindle Scout campaign was a mystery, a murder mystery. And I found my genre. I found where I wanted to be. And I should have known all along, you know, I'm a big Sherlock Holmes fan, and you know, and always love, you know, not so much thriller, but mystery, murder mystery and crime mystery. So the book that Kindle Scout published was called The Dead List. And I've had readers come to me and say, yeah, you found where you're supposed to be. So my goal now is to expand on that. And I do have an outline worked out for the next book in the John Drake series. That's The Dead List. So I'll be working that towards the end of this year, early next year, and I'll try and get that finished and put it out. So I think after all this, I've determined that I'm a crime writer. I'm crime. That's where I am, I think.
That's awesome. It's good to see that you found yourself in the course of this. And it's so cool to see also that in that process, you've had many great victories, and kudos to you for keeping on pushing through until you found that thing that really resonates with you. It's so hard. I get a lot of people that come to me and say, well, what niche should I publish in? I'm just get it out there. Just do something you're passionate in, and you'll discover it as you're going through this process of publishing. And I think that's one of the things that I've discovered, you know, thankfully over the past 4 years, I've been able to really niche out something, and I kind of go, oh, I really love this. You're not married to your brand. You don't have to keep doing the same thing. So,
and we need to keep growing as writers too. You know, I was at a writers conference several years ago, and there was a table with best-selling authors, like huge, Diana Gabaldon and 3 other authors, and it was they were interviewed, asked different questions, and all of them at some point during those Q&As said, I'm just trying to be a better writer. I'm trying to resonate more with my readers. And that blew my mind, because that showed me that it's a journey, right? We don't get there. So I'm just trying to become a better writer, and I'll never ever get there, you know, but as long as each work gets a little better, and I'm growing as a writer and a communicator of words, I'm happy with that.
You know, I think some people liken this business, and maybe even other businesses as well, almost like it's a game and they expect an end result. But those that are really students of the game understand that it's the long term. You can do this to the day you die. If you really are passionate about it, you'll keep trucking along. And that's why I'm not here for a cup of coffee. I'm here for the long haul, because I'm with you. I just want to be better at what I do. I want to be a better writer, a better publisher, a better person.
Absolutely.
So this is going to be kind of a rough segue. I want to go over to something that what Paul and I were discussing on our interview most recently about BookBub. Now, we're not going to give them too much free press, but one of the instances that he brought up was BookBub, and he said there are many other ways you can be able to share your book or promote your book that are actually cost effective and still very effective. And that's when he brought up your name. And we're going to talk a little bit about bookdoggy.com. Fill me in on this. Tell me like I'm brand new to this, because I already kind of did a little bit of recon and looked at your site. And I'm going to say this. It's dirt cheap. Good Lord.
Book Doggy has taken over my life, Dale. Book Doggy is just everything right now. Yeah. The way that it happened was I quite honestly, I felt I could do a better job than some of the other book promotion sites out there. I thought I could offer authors more, and I thought I could do it for less money. So I researched it for a few months and then built a site and created a newsletter over a 8-month period, 6-month period, pardon me.
Okay.
And hired some web people and SEO people and did some email procurement and did all kinds of things to create Book Doggy. And Book Doggy is a site where we're like the regular sites where we promote your book, whether it's free or 99 cents or $1.99 or your new release. So we promote your books, but we also give the subscriber or the viewer of the website a chance to connect with you too. So we do two things. We publish your contact information beside your book, so there's a direct link to your website. So if readers want to know more about your work, they can go directly there. And we have a new item that we're working on that's just being introduced, and it's called 7 Words. And it's a little game where readers can describe your work or just give some input on your cover or your blurb in 7 words. And that's it starts a thread, and that's something brand new that we're working on. Basically, we just try and get the word out there on your book. Now, we have had a number of high-profile authors promote with us, which is great, but our specialty is finding undiscovered gems. And let me tell you, there are so many books out there. I'll get a submission, and I'll think, gee, that cover looks fantastic. And then I'll read the synopsis, and gee, that looks pretty good. And I'll read the first look inside part on Amazon's page, and I'll think, yeah, that's a book I really want to read. And it came out 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago, and it has 3 reviews and a horrible ranking. And I think to myself, why aren't readers reading this? Where's the audience? Has it? Yeah. And obviously it hasn't had an audience because there's no reviews. So we give authors an opportunity to reach readers and show them their work. And we've had so many books that we've been able to promote that have found an audience now, that readers have downloaded the book, they've contacted the author, and I've had authors come back week after week after week trying to promote again with me, the same authors. So it's working. So although we're fine with giving our subscribers those high-profile USA Today best-selling authors, I really love finding that book that hasn't found its audience and falling in love with the book from what I see of it and getting it out to readers. It's such a thrill.
That is really awesome. And I think that speaks volumes with what you're offering to the world, because you could very well just go and deal with the large publishing houses, but it's very clear that you're in it for those self-publishers out there, those DIY publishers. And I think you're speaking to the right audience, I hope.
Yeah, well, that's what I want. You know, that's what we want, and we've found them. We've if we have a testimonial page, and I had to have my guy move it to 2 pages because we're getting so many great comments from authors that are really happy with what we've been able to do with them in terms of finding an audience. So it's really, really cool. It's been lots of fun.
Yeah, and it seems like, gosh, everything is, the pricing's all available on the webpage, by the way, folks, and you can check that out in the description down below. You'll be able to click on that link and just kind of browse the site, take a look at the testimonials, and just the price points on the various things are just so affordable. Where I look at BookBub, I get sticker shock. I'm immediately like, you said 300? Like, what else do I get for that? Back rubs for the next month? I mean, seriously, but it seems to me that you're offering at a price point that makes sense for a lot of us that are out there that are just grinding and hustling inside this business and just trying to make ends meet. And for you to offer that, I just kudos to you. I can guarantee you I will be coming and leaning on you very, very soon and giving this a shot. So definitely. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Gee, I don't know. That's no, I think I've mentioned Indies Unlimited, which again is a great resource, and Paul is a great guy to touch base with. Feel free to friend me on Facebook. That's kind of where I hang out, and if there's anybody that has any questions that I can help with, I'm happy to help. And that's one of the other things that we do at Book Doggy is we help you with the best day to promote and the genre you should be in. I've
Oh,
rewritten synopsises for authors. So yeah, whatever I can do to help,
I'm
I'm
gonna
I'm
be
happy to
giving you
help.
a call, man. I'm telling you what, you need to help me out with my synopsis because I tell you what, I can write a book and I can do a decent cover, but when it comes to synopsis, sometimes I find myself kind of straddling that fence where I kind of go, am I really saying the things that
Yeah. I'm the same way when I write it for my own books. We shouldn't do it. We shouldn't be allowed to do our own books.
That's a well put. But that's almost like the perfect thing to finish on. But I'm going to do this to where I always try to finish it off on a good note. You've already kind of told us where we can contact you. So now my last question is, what kind of advice would you give to my viewers right now, be it newbie self-publishers to the veterans?
Keep writing. You know, I've been asked over and over, what's the best way that you can market your book, and it's go write another great book. You know, keep writing, and the book that you've written, if it's not working, maybe it's just not the right time. It could be just not right time, and it could be the content. So keep writing and creating and growing as a writer. And remember the words that my mentor Ed Griffin said: nobody knows your story as well as you do. So keep working at it and listen to that little voice inside your head, and keep pushing forward like you're doing yourself.
Excellent, man. I can't thank you enough for taking time
My
out of your
pleasure.
day
Thank you.
to sit with me. And we're going into the holiday weekend up there in Canada. Once again, happy Thanksgiving. Make sure that you stick around until after I press the stop on the record. And thank you to all the viewers for tuning in.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate it.
Hey, big thank you to you, Martin, again for taking time out of your day to shed just a little bit of light about your journey along your publishing path. If you have any questions or concerns for Martin, please make sure that you look at some of the links that I have in the description below. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you tune in every Friday for a new self-publishing interview. Till later, this has been Self-Publishing with Dale, and I'll see you soon.